He asks Spandam again if he was the one who killed the missing scouts. Spandam just smiles and shrugs. Russel becomes angry and clasps his fist. He recalls that he planned to escape after a short confrontation, as the system told him, so he could go find the scouts. Instead, he activates and releases a great deal of mana, seeming ready to make a stand. He angrily reasons that this isn't a time to be thinking about the future. Spandam smiles and exclaims that Russel's been hiding his real power while fighting him. The knight grasps his sword and says they'll see if he can stay easygoing while his entire body is in pain from being torn to shreds. Russel looks down at his cloudy ring and notices it hasn't recharged yet, which means there's only one way out in the end. Spandam raises his sword to land another attack. He uses something called a Rodel torrent, causing a torrent of blood. Russel sees the torrent rushing toward him, and he decides to use his last option. He activates his draconification. Russel's entire body is suddenly covered in flames as he sends out fire to burn through the torrent of blood. Spandam is shocked that the boy is able to pierce through the attack. Meanwhile, Russel doesn't emerge from the pool of fire he's in. Suddenly he jumps out after activating his draconification. He starts a countdown and realizes he has just 14 seconds before the power runs out. Quickly crafting his blaze lance, he rushes toward Spandam. Spandam smiles as he watches him and reasons that this might be quite dangerous. Regardless, he doesn't move out of the way as Russel leaps toward him with the blaze lance in hand. Russel launches a destructive fire blast at the spot where Spandam is standing. Shortly after, the flames clear, and Russel stands in the fiery furnace. He looks around for Spandam, but the knight appears behind him. Spandam speaks from behind, shocking him. He says he doesn't know what trick Russel used. He attacks Russel with his sword, but our boy deflects the attack with his hand. Spandam tells him he's sure he only temporarily boosted his powers. Russel keeps counting down and realizes he has 9 seconds left. Spandam proceeds to attack again, slashing across Russel's face with his sword, but our boy quickly retaliates with a swing of his lance. The effect of the attack results in a great explosion. Spandam jumps out of the way to avoid the explosion, and Russel counts that he has 6 seconds left. Spandam scorns him, saying that if buffing up his power isn't enough to kill him, then it's a useless power. The knight leaps upward, saying it's time to end this. He uses a skill called Cyclone Typhoon, and a typhoon of blood slashes emerges. Russel looks up at him and frowns. The knight leaps downward toward our boy, aiming to tear through him with the attack, but Russel blocks with the lance to match the attack. Spandam's sword clashes with Russel's lance, but Spandam quickly uses a blood wave to deflect the lance and redirect the attack. Russel's lance hits the ground, and he mistakenly fires into the ground instead. The resulting explosion is massive and engulfs the entire fighting ground. After the fire clears, Russel collapses to his knees. Our boy pants, looking exhausted, as Spandam stands in front of him. Spandam watches him on his knees while the fire clears out. Russel keeps counting and realizes he has 2 seconds left. Spandam laughs and asks if he's finally done. Russel tells him there's still one more thing. He says he still has 1 second and places his hands on the ground for his last attack. The attack he uses is 6th circle magic, and it shocks Spandam. The ground beneath them begins to crack and fire begins to rise. The crack widens and Spandam looks genuinely shocked. The fire turns to magma, making it look like they're both inside a volcano. Russel transforms the entire area into a volcanic zone using a skill called Meltdown. In a flashback to when Russel was studying in the professor's library, he remembers reading about the Meltdown method. He recalls that he was able to understand the principle behind it, but because it needed 6th circle magic, he couldn't use it. The skill works by starting from small fire embers and then covering the whole area with magma. In the present, Pepper comes to Russel's rescue and carries him out of the magma. In the sky, Russel thanks Pepper for his help. Meanwhile, Pepper struggles to keep him up because of the difference in weight. From the top of a rock, Russel looks down to see what had become of Spandam. Suddenly someone appears behind him. Russel quickly turns around to see who it is. It turns out to be Spandam, who coughs profusely and looks badly injured with one arm cut off. Russel goes close to him and targets his head with a firebolt. He asks Spandam if he has any last words, but Spandam doesn't respond and keeps shivering. Spandam finally smiles and asks him if he finds their situation funny. Spandam talks about the Guardians and says they drive them to war in the name of protecting their country, but they don't let them know how to get out of it. He mentions that you have to kill over and over again. He adds that the path of a Guardian is indeed a bloody road. Spandam tells Russel that he welcomes him to it. Russel hesitates and Spandam just keeps waiting for him. Seconds later, Russel executes Spandam on the spot. He stands in front of the corpse and just thinks quietly. The system soon brings up a notification that he has completed the mission and exceeded the requirements, so he is awarded 8 intermediate-grade mana stones. Meanwhile in the tavern, another scout comes to give intel to Jackson and tells him that word has gotten around that Spandam, a knight of the Empire, is acting in secret in the desert. The man tells Jackson that the disappearance of the scouts might be connected to him as well. Jackson is shocked, and he reasons that if this is true, then the divinity of the Flame Tower is in danger as well. He reasons that no matter how skilled he is, he won't be able to stand against Spandam. While they're talking, Russel walks into the tavern. He walks to the counter and drops a broken sword on the table. Jackson is shocked and recognizes the sword as Spandam's sword. Jackson just stares at him and doesn't know what to say. Russel smiles at him and tells him he'd just like a glass of water. Jackson quickly gets him the water and says he can ask for whatever he wants. That night, Jackson goes to the orb and files his report. He sends his report about the Flame Tower scouts, and he also informs them that Russel Raymond killed the pagans and Spandam. Shortly after that, word got around. It even reached Camelot, the capital of Endymion. Everyone hears about Russel Raymond, the last heir to the fallen house of Raymond. They hear the rumor that he defeated Abomination, the magical beast of the pagans, and that he even beat Spandam, a knight of the Empire. Despite being a newcomer in the Flame Tower, the rumor was hard to believe, and it was met with mixed feelings. Shortly after, Russel returned to the tower through the portal. When he appears, the master looks excited to see him, but Brother Olsen and Hubert seem intrigued. Some, like Master Daria, feel relief. She rubs his hair and thanks him for coming back alive. Some became competitive. Master Melville reads the report, and he laughs that it seems this is going to be a tough bet. Alan also reads it, and he comments that it seems this junior is way more awesome than he thought. Some felt hate and rage. In another part of the world, some people inform Spandam's master, McGray Hughes, that he is dead. McGray cleans his sword, and he asks the men if that's all the information they have for him. McGray is the swordmaster of the Empire, and the rage is evident in his eyes. The men cower before him and tell him that's all the information they have. Russell reasons that even though everyone felt different emotions, they all had one thing in common. Meanwhile, McGray declares that it's going to be an eye for an eye, a disciple for a disciple. He smashes his sword on the ground in deep anger. A dark force comes out of the ground where he strikes and travels forward. The force travels from where he is into the forest and destroys the whole place. The one thing everyone that heard the message had in common is that they all had a strong impression of Russel Raymond. McGray remembers Daria Stone White, and he says that he'll get payback for this at all costs. Later, Russell gives Master Daria a report of his mission. She asks him if what he's saying is that the pagans were involved in his father's death. Russell reaffirms what he said. She informs him that a lot of records were lost during the war, and it's hard to find out the true situation. She says it will be harder to identify the culprit. Russell tells her that he's aware of that. To comfort him, the master holds his hands and tells him that one thing is sure. She says that if they keep chasing the pagans, they'll be able to reach the truth, and she asks him if he thinks so. The master assures him that she, along with the Flame Tower, will always be here to help him, and Russell heartily thanks her. Shortly after, the coach rider announces to them that they've arrived at their destination. Master Daria tells him that she hopes he can put his doubts and anxiety aside so that he can expand the horizon of his knowledge for today. They get down and step into a large building. Inside the building, there's a gathering of the Magic Tower Council. The Magic Tower Council is a magic society that brings together the masters of more than 20 magic towers that exist within Endymion. Russell says that 2 months ago, thanks to him defeating Spandam, he was granted access to attend this council as an aide of the master, despite being a rookie within the tower. When they step in, one of the masters recognizes Russell as the divinity they've heard about, and another man says that it's an honor to meet him. Russell laughs and thanks them for their kindness. While they're greeting, someone else who approaches them nearby tells Master Daria it's been a while, referring to her as senior. Daria turns around to see who it is. She recognizes the man as the Yellow Tower Master, and she repeats that it's indeed been a long time. When he nears them, Miss Daria introduces the Yellow Tower Master as Niccolo Machiavelli. She informs Russell that he's the organizer of today's Magic Tower Council. Russell quickly bows and greets the master. The man laughs and tells him that he doesn't have to be so formal. He remarks that he took down the disciple of that damned rascal. Russell looks up and wonders what rascal they're talking about. Miss Daria informs him that he's talking about McGray Hughes, the Empire's swordmaster. She informs him that the man he took down was his disciple. Niccolo points at the slash across his eye and says it was refreshing to hear the news. Russell notices the cut across his eye and realizes that it must have been McRae's doing. Master Daria interjects and asks him to stop bringing up old wounds and to go get ready for the presentation. She reminds him that he had said he had an important agenda today. Moments later, Master Melville and Alan Page approach them. Master Melville greets the Flame Tower Master and the Yellow Tower Master. Russell looks to his side and spots the Spear Tower Master. Miss Daria smiles and tells Melville that he seems to be jealous that her disciple is being praised. Melville laughs and asks her if she thinks he's as petty as she is. Niccolo senses the tension building, so he quickly excuses himself to go prepare for his presentation. Niccolo quickly escapes because he knows they're at it again. Master Melville mentions that since they're on the topic, he hopes she hasn't forgotten their bet on the relic from the era of the gods, but Miss Daria retorts that she can't forget. Master Melville starts to boast and says his dear Alan has already done something. Before he can finish his sentence, Alan places his hands on his master's shoulders and reminds him they need to get to their seats. Alan starts to drag him away, and Master Melville calls him a brat and tells him that he was still talking. He screams at Alan to let go of him. Russell begins to laugh at the display by the master and his disciple. Shortly after, the presentation begins, and Master Niccolo announces that they start this session of the Magic Tower Council. He announces that the main agenda for this meeting is about the ruins being excavated at Mount Calvain. He says that the ruins appear to date from the end of the mythological era, and evidence of them having been looted is yet to be found. This means there's still a good chance a relic is intact, so he grins widely. Russell thinks about the idea of a relic from the mythological era, and Master Daria comments that they just may unearth an artifact that will rock the times. Niccolo announces to the masters that this is why they need their help to secure the site. Master Niccolo calls on Sir Alan Page of the Spear Tower to help out. He also mentions Russell from the Flame Tower, and he says he would like to ask them both a favor. The people begin to whisper, and they say that's a good idea since Russell has already proven his skills. Miss Daria gloats and says to herself that it's certain they'll have to choose Russell, and she asks whose disciple they think he is. Suddenly, one of the masters objects to the motion. Master Daria swiftly turns to her side to see the person who objected. It turns out to be a man named Blaine Trilogy, the Red Tower Master, who had come to the meeting with a boy named Giron, a mage in the Red Tower. Master Blaine walks to the middle, and Niccolo is surprised to see him. Master Niccolo asks him to explain why he objects, if he doesn't mind. Master Blaine mentions the name Alex Raymond, Russell's father. He turns aside to look at Russell, who is shocked to hear his father's name. Blaine says that he objects because of Alex Raymond's defeat. Some of the people ask how the son can be blamed for his father's defeat, and another man says that the war with the Empire was a long time ago. Blaine insists that even though they're correct, the defeat cost the kingdom's finest elite soldiers their lives after he left the fight without permission. The entire room quiets down and nobody talks. Miss Daria interjects and says that is pure speculation because they have no records of that time. Blaine tells her that she's wrong because he was there. Russell and Master Daria are shocked to hear that. Blaine says that he saw him run away with his own 2 eyes. Russell listens in shock, and he seems horrified to hear that his father fled during the war. Russell recalls that it's no secret his father died during the war, but he wonders why this man is spouting such nonsense. Blaine declares to the masters that the Raymond family owes a debt to the kingdom they must pay back. He adds that they need to consider how cheated out of the kingdom's youth would feel if they entrusted such an important mission to the Raymond family. Master Blaine says that the Red Tower will not provide any support to this expedition if Russell is in charge of the guard. Some of the men consider their options because Russell is known as the Rising Divinity, but it's hard to leave out the Red Tower from this. Niccolo watches the situation and realizes that Blaine has swayed the crowd with just a few words. He reasons that this is expected of the Red Tower, and Blaine must have also expected this because of the backing he has. Master Niccolo thinks about a high-ranking man in society, Archduke Bismarck. He recalls that Blaine is trusted by the king's uncle and the most powerful man in the land, the Archduke. Niccolo reasons that revolting against him means animosity toward the Archduke's faction. He recognizes that the only people who aren't careful when interacting with him are Master Melville and Master Daria. Meanwhile, Master Melville listens to Blaine's explanation and says that this is just ridiculous. Daria senses Russell's anger and tells him not to get involved because she'll handle it. Suddenly, Russell informs the Red Tower Master he'd like to ask him something. Against Daria's instruction, Blaine turns around and Russell asks him if he can take responsibility for what he has just said. Master Blaine asks what he means by responsibility, and Russell asks if he can take responsibility for insulting the House of Raymond. Master Daria stops Russell and tells him that this is not the time. Meanwhile, Blaine scoffs and remarks that the honor of a lowly fallen family means nothing. He tells Russell to be grateful that Daria is his master. He says if she weren't, he would have torn out his tongue and turned him into an example for all the other arrogant and impudent mages. Suddenly, someone enters and mentions to the Red Tower Master that he acts more and more royal every time she sees him. She comments that one could mistake him for His Majesty, the king himself. Everyone turns around, shocked to see who enters. The intruder is Hecate Rathmos, the princess of the kingdom. The masters promptly bow down to greet the princess. Blaine also bows to greet her but wonders why the princess is here. Princess Hecate says she was listening from outside, and she thinks that the Red Tower Master has a point. She says that if someone owes a debt, they have to pay it back. Miss Daria tries to interject but the princess says there's a but. Princess Hecate says that for the person to pay back, they must be given the chance to do so. Finally, she announces to them that she's ordering that the Spear Tower and the Flame Tower act as guards, along with the Red Tower. Blaine hears her verdict and he's surprised. Princess Hecate simply smirks at him. Blaine reacts and reminds Her Highness that this is not a matter to be taken so lightly. Princess Hecate calls on Niccolo and asks him who the greatest sponsor of the excavation is. Master Niccolo mentions that she is the great sponsor. The princess smiles and says they're going to proceed as she said. After she makes her statement, she leaves the room. Blaine looks at her and smiles uncomfortably. Niccolo quickly quiets everyone down and announces that the next item on the agenda is the schedule of the excavation. Russel seems dumbfounded by all that just happened and thinks about Princess Hecate. After the meeting, Blaine reasons that this was his chance to nip the Raymond family in the bud. But he can't believe the princess interfered. Suddenly, Geron notices something on the track of their coach, and he jumps to the roof, wielding a crimson sword. The coach rider stops abruptly when he reaches someone blocking their path. Master Blaine comes down and tells Daria that he can see she still has no manners. Daria simply smiles and says he's not the only one who doesn't have manners. Suddenly, Geron points his sword at Daria's neck. She smiles at him and asks if he thinks his sword is enough. Geron just looks at her, not understanding what she means. Master Blaine steps forward and tells Jaren to put his weapon away. Geron is surprised by his master's change in tone, so he bows and leaves. Blaine tells Daria that, from knowing her, he knows she's not here for an apology, so he asks what she wants to say. Daria says she wants to talk about Alex Raymond, and Blaine seems surprised. She asks him if he also witnessed Alex's death, and he informs her that he didn't exactly see it. Miss Daria says that's a shame because she's trying to get to the bottom of his death and thought she'd ask him just in case. Blaine comments that he doesn't believe she'd go to such lengths and asks if she was acquainted with the dead Raymond. Daria angrily rebuffs that it's a matter concerning her youngest disciple, and a disciple's matters are their master's matters. She adds that she's simply trying to help her disciple settle a score, and she's going to find whoever was responsible for his death. She immediately strikes her staff on the ground and disappears, leaving the men surprised. Master Blaine orders the rider to turn the carriage around and head to the Archduke's mansion. He says there is something there he needs to check. Meanwhile, in the Archduke's mansion, a skull is placed in a dark room with a heretic inscription on its forehead. Suddenly the skeleton comes to life, and its eyes burn bright. Sometime later, Master Daria asks Russel if he's still leaving tomorrow. She asks him how he will be able to perform well in the mission when he's so distracted during his training. She asks him if what that old man said is still bothering him. Russel continues his fight against the monsters, and he tells her he's not. Master Daria looks closely at him, and she recalls that people had praised him as divinity, and now suddenly they're slandering his late father as a coward. She wonders if there's a way that he wouldn't be shaken by it. Master Daria comes down to speak to him. She tells him that the truth will eventually come to the surface, and she wishes he would just focus on walking on his path. Russel thinks about what she said about walking his path. Finally, he asks Master Daria to guide him once again. The master laughs and seems pleased by his statement. Russel realizes that it's not going to be an easy path, but it's a path that must be walked. He tells himself that children must step out of the shadows of their parents. Meanwhile, Princess Hecate walks out in the public and conceals her identity. As she looks back at the palace, she thinks about how large the shadow of her parents is. She turns away from the house and proceeds to explore the city. 3 days later, on Mount Calvane, a portal opens up from the flame tower. Russel walks through the portal and steps onto the mountain. He looks around at the scenery of the mountain that he's heard about. Suddenly, he realizes how cold it is and starts to shiver. He flips his finger and releases some energy to warm up the atmosphere. The people around are surprised to see that the air has suddenly warmed up. Meanwhile, one of the people working in the excavation center looks like the princess. One guy asks Russel if he is the Russel Raymond of the Flame Tower, and he affirms that he is. The man tells him that they've been waiting, so he shows him the way. As Russel follows him, he spots several flags. He spots the flag of the Royal Path Yellow Tower, another for the Everall Yellow Tower, and another for the Chaos Yellow Tower. He realizes that all the experts of Earth-type magic have gathered here for the work. The man asks Russel if he thinks the scale of the work is impressive. The man tells him that they even made the entire building out of magic crystals. Russel notices how reflective the building is, and he says they're like mirrors. The man affirms his statement and says this is why they call the ruins the Temple of Mirrors. Shortly after, they meet an old man who welcomes Russel. He introduces himself as Spiegelman of the Yellow Tower, the man in charge of the expedition. Russel respectfully greets him and introduces himself. Russel recognizes the man as a skilled one who rose from his status as a commoner to an elder of the Royal Path Yellow Tower. He is also the archaeologist and adventurer who's unearthed more ruins than anyone else in the kingdom. Russel wonders if he can ask him some questions that have been on his mind. Suddenly, Alan arrives, and he acknowledges Russell's presence. Our boy is excited to see him, and he comments that he came so soon. They both shake hands, and Russel says it's nice to meet him. Russel jokingly calls Alan a diligent genius, and tells him that's cheating. but Alan laughs and says he wants to protect the mythological relic. Alan says they'll have to wait for the Guardian of the Red Tower to arrive so they can talk about their shift and their missions together. Mr. Spiegelman reasons that it's definitely comforting to have the divinities of the kingdom guarding the excavation site. He also wonders what trouble they could ever have at these stinking ruins that made them send all these personnel there. Spiegelman thinks deeply, and he feels it's a bit excessive. While he's thinking, a loud explosion catches the attention of all three men in another part of the site. Some of the workers run away, and Russell asks them what's happening. An ice golem emerges from the spot and growls at them. Spiegelman recognizes it as a crystal golem, and Alan quickly tells everyone to run to a safe place. The crystal golem becomes irritated and fires several crystals at them. Spiegelman protects the workers from an impact using shields, but the crystals break through them and impale the men. Spiegelman is shocked to see that the shields didn't stand a chance. He decides to use something else, so he hits his hands on the ground. His actions cause the earth to protrude forward to act as a wall between them and the monster's crystals. Spiegelman tells everyone to raise an earth wall to block the attacks. Princess Hecate finds one of the injured men and helps him up, telling him to hang in there. Suddenly, the golem appears behind the princess and the man she's helping. The monster reaches out its large hand and shoots out crystal bullets, and the princess exclaims when she turns backward. She raises her hands and tries to release some mana to stop the onslaught. Before she can respond, Russell comes to her rescue with his blaze lance and burns away the crystals with a sweep of his weapon. The princess is surprised to see him, so she doesn't respond. He turns towards her and asks her if she's okay, but he sees something that catches his attention. He sees her purple hair, and he remembers that he's seen that somewhere. He realizes she's the princess and calls her by her position. But Hecate seems dissatisfied that her identity has been revealed. The monster growls at them and stops their little funfair, drawing Russell's attention once more. Meanwhile, Alan Page uses an original magical construct of his called the Glacier Bow. He fires an arrow at the monster's back, but the attack doesn't seem to do much except make it angrier. Alan reasons that he tried to destroy its entire torso, but it seems quite hard. Suddenly, the monster is attacked by a great force that shatters through it. The strength of the explosion causes Alan and Russell to protect themselves. Jaron appears and uses one of his original magical constructs called the Bloody Flame Sword. The impact of the attack smashes the monster to pieces, surprising everyone around. After the monster is destroyed, Jaron mentions that he doesn't think he's late. He introduces himself as Jaron of the Red Tower. Russell doesn't say anything but just stares at him. Jaron also just stares at him, wondering why he's staring at him. 3 days earlier, Jaron and his master, Blaine, went to a secret room in the Archduke's house. Blaine asks the mysterious skull about Alex Raymond. Blaine informs the skull that Daria has started investigating his death, and he asks the skull if it has any idea about that. The skull thinks for a while and says he can't think of any other reason other than the fact that Blaine ordered his death. Blaine just keeps quiet and looks into the distance. The skull asks him what's wrong and asks if he's worried that he'll get caught. Blaine says that's not possible, but he's just disappointed. He speaks to the person speaking through the skull, and reminds him that if he had properly gotten rid of Russel Raymond during the tower's screening, Daria wouldn't have even had the chance to have any doubts. The skull tells him that that happened because he got the wrong intel that Russel Raymond was just a kid. Blaine becomes angry and demands to know if he's blaming him. Someone walks into the room, and he asks Blaine if he called him here just to watch the two of them fighting. It turns out to be the Archduke, Bismarck Rathmos. Blaine promptly bows to the Archduke, who asks him if it's true that his little niece interfered in the meeting, and he comments that time flies quickly. Blaine affirms that the princess interfered and said that they originally planned to keep the guards to a minimum. The Archduke tells him to get to the point and asks how he plans to take the ruins. Blaine informs him that Jaron, his disciple, will join the guards. He says Jaron will create a branch in the protective barrier set up by the Yellow Tower. After he does that, the henchmen of this ill-mannered pagan will ambush the expedition team. By pagan, he's referring to who's talking behind the skull. The Archduke thinks about what he said, and reminds them that, as they all know, in order for their plan to succeed, they must subdue the masters that protect the current king. He says that to cut off the support of those masters, they need the article from the ruins. The Archduke brings out an object and asks them if they don't think they could use a little insurance on this matter. Meanwhile, Princess Hecate drags Russell somewhere private and he tries to stop her. He begs her to let go of him, but she doesn't listen. The princess turns to him and tells him to be quiet. She informs him that her coming here is top secret, and it must also remain that way in the future. She asks him to simply ignore her and go on his own way, even though it may be hard to understand. Russell comments that she must be very fond of these ruins. He says that if he were the one, he'd be very disappointed not to have seen them for himself too, since they're ruins from the mythological era. He smiles at her and informs her she has nothing to worry about. The princess tells him that His Majesty, the king, and his ministers are going crazy trying to keep her still, but he doesn't seem to be so worried about her. Russel replies that he caught a sneak peek of her aura right before he came to save her. He excitedly says she has such monstrous power that even most knights can't handle, so he thinks there's no need to worry. The princess is shocked to hear him call her power monstrous, so she releases some mana to her hand and taps his head. Russel just stands there with a bump on his head. The princess tells him she'll get going and encourages that they do their best. As she leaves, she reasons that he's got a decent character, but he's still a complete kid. Meanwhile, Russel remembers that he should have asked her for the dragon heart that the system told him to secure in exchange for turning a blind eye. He wonders how he forgot and says he's an idiot. Meanwhile, Elder Spiegelman leads the other Earth magicians to break down a barrier to an entrance into the ruins. Russel soon appears and apologizes to Alan for being late. He notices the men struggling to break the barrier and asks why magic spells aren't working at all. Alan informs him that it's something called spatial disruption, which is one of the most powerful protective barriers in the world. Regardless of how hard the men try, the barrier doesn't break. The men groan as they realize their efforts aren't working. Mr. Spiegelman angrily curses and wonders why there is a spatial disruption now of all times when they finally found the gate to the ruins. Meanwhile, Jaren just stands back and doesn't say anything. Jiran reasons that he needs to send a report to the Archduke. Later on, Elder Spiegelman is shocked to hear that there is a way to breach the barrier. Alan informs him that with the relic from the era of gods in the Spear Tower's possession, they can penetrate through the barrier and pass through. Mr. Spiegelman says that he doubts they'll give up something so precious so easily, and Alan says he plans to go personally to ask for it. Mr. Spiegelman grabs his hand in appreciation. He tells him that if he can sort out this issue this time, he promises to repay him for the favor as a representative of the Yellow Tower. Alan just smiles and says he'll try to get back as soon as he can. Alan goes to meet the other mages and tells them that although it's against his will, he is indebted to both of them for covering for him when he leaves. Russel says it's not like that and assures him that everything will be okay. Jaren doesn't say anything but reasons that with Alan's page gone, that leaves only one war mage here. And that's Russel. Russel suddenly informs Jaren that he'd like to discuss duty rotations with him for the night today. Jaren smirks and tells Russel that he'll go first. He turns back and informs the others that he's tired, so he'll be going first. Russel reasons that he's got such a creepy smile. Later that night, some Yellow Tower magicians sit by one end of the shield to guard the site. While they're warming themselves by a fire, they spot some intruders who are henchmen of the pagans outside the shield. The men order them to stop where they are because this place is under the Yellow Tower's jurisdiction. They are suddenly pierced through by crimson shots and scream in pain. In front of them, Jiran, who is an inside agent, uses his magic to finish them off. He goes to the shield and creates an opening to let the henchmen in. As they enter, he informs them that there's been a change of plans. He informs them that a spatial disruption appeared in the area where the ruins are being guarded. He says that to bring the artifact that can break it down, Alan Page is headed for the Spear Tower. The masked guy amidst the henchmen takes a whiff of the smell of burning corpses and says it's lovingly nasty. Jiran continues by saying that to blackmail Alan, they simply need to take Spiegelman as a hostage. The masked guy asks him about the guy who's called the divinity of the Flame Tower and says kidnapping is lame. Jaren tells them to kill him. He reminds them that he won't tolerate mistakes like the last time. One really big guy in the knight's armor amidst the henchmen walks up to him and says, "That's a lot of nagging coming from an onlooker," referring to Jiran. Jiran becomes angry and it looks like they're about to fight. The masked guy stops the big guy and tells them that they're on the same side and they can't be doing this. The masked guy adds that Jaren is Sir Blaine's cherished illegitimate child, so he can't get hurt. Jiran hears what he says and gets angry. He brings out his sword and stabs the guy, but the masked guy creates a portal in front of him to deflect the attack. Jaren angrily asks him what he said, and the masked guy says he was just making a joke. He tells Jiran to calm down and open up his heart a bit. Meanwhile, the other henchmen create a magic circle to cast a pagan spell. Soon after, some gruesome monsters come out of the circle after the spell is cast. The masked guy walks away and informs Jiran that although there's no way it'll happen, he should forget about using the object that the Archduke gave him if things go wrong. Jiran just looks at him and stays quiet. He recalls a conversation with Master Blaine, who reminds him that after the mission ends, he has to live as a ghost until the day that the Archduke ascends the throne. Blaine reminds him that there mustn't be a single survivor to return from the expedition. Jiran asks him if it's okay to use the object that the Archduke gave him if things go south. For a while, Blaine keeps quiet and just looks at him. Finally, he asks Jiran if he doesn't want to be acknowledged by him. He tells the boy that he's simply going to carry out the mission well and ensure that nothing goes wrong at all costs. Back in the present, Jiran concludes to do as his master pleases. As he watches the fiery monsters come out, he decides that he'll become a ghost after the mission ends. He says he won't just become a ghost, but one that spreads fear and despair.